Okay, going live. Live is started. Inviting Malkie. Until that happens, did anyone else get hail today? I'm torn because I missed out on actually seeing the crazy hail, which is very unusual for the place where I live. But on the other hand, I was actually indoors and not on my way to work when it happened. Hey!
Hey, what story are we talking about?
How are you doing? Well, I didn't want there to be dead air in the beginning, so I was saying how, on the one hand, I'm bummed that I missed out on experiencing the giant hailstorm of Beersheba, not a place known for its
Hailstorms?
hailstorms, precipitation in general. But on the other hand, I'm really, really glad that I got to work about 15 minutes before it started because it didn't seem like a fun thing to be caught out in.
It's not. It's not. Yeah, it's winter again today. It was summer and now it's winter. We only have these two settings, so.
Yes, that is basically how it goes.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember when I was a kid, we raised llamas, among other things, and we had this baby llama who I had the privilege to be with when he experienced his first hailstorm. And he was definitely 100% convinced that someone was throwing things at him on purpose.
That is really funny. I'm just going to move this in the hopes that maybe the lighting will improve. That didn't help. Oh, well. There's a new light bulb, but it's not a great one. It's not working great. Okay.
All right.
Is there anything? Technical difficulties?
They're much better than our previous technical difficulties.
Yes, and I'm not yellow this time, so that's got to be an improvement, right?
Absolutely, moving
I'm
in the right direction.
But I'm not yellow.
You look much healthier like this.
I think so too. Thank you. Okay,
right.
So let's do our introductions.
Yes. So, in case you're watching this for the first time, hi. I am, what do I call myself here? I am Havva, practitioner in Chinese medicine and expert in classical Chinese astrology, and with me is...
I'm Malkie Rimon, and I am a badass life coach.
Oh, I like it.
That's what I am. Like it. You know, I have to own it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The longer I work, the more I realize that what you believe colors everything that you do, and it's just like I had a client and it was like she could do the same thing from 5 different beliefs and get like 5 different results, and it's all taking the same action, right? But because of where she's coming from, taking the action, she's getting one set of results. She can perform the same action with a completely different mindset and get a completely different set of results. So she's experimenting with that. Please God. Yeah.
Oh, so there's this this coach whose podcast I've been listening to. I don't think I can say the name here because I think we agreed no swearing. But if you look up the Scottish life coach, you'll probably find him.
Oh yeah, yeah. F yourself. Can we say that?
No,
Can we briefly say that?
No, it's un-F your mind.
There the book is yourself, right?
But he had this. I think I got it right. Anyway, he has this this thing on motivation, and he's like. I'm not going to try and do a Scottish accent, although that makes it much better. But like the action that you take is much less important than the motivation. Like say, I've decided not to go to dinner with my parents. I could have decided not to go to dinner with my parents from a place of amazing abundance. I have so many wonderful things that I can do tonight that I'm choosing to go to the theater where my friend is performing a solo rather than go to dinner with my parents. I can be, how do you say in English, like behoges, like I can be sulking. Yeah. Right? Like, I'm not going to dinner with my parents after what they did. I can, you know, I can be setting boundaries and feeling my strength. Like, no, I'm not going to go to dinner because right now we're not in a place where we do that. And the action technically is the same, but it's not.
No, it really isn't. It really isn't. It can look the same on the outside. But
exactly. I'm not picking on my parents, by the way. I actually went to lunch with my dad last week, but that was the example that came up.
Right. It's because it's a good one. It's a universal one, and we're not, you know. Yeah. But yeah, there. I don't think anyone thought that you're picking on your parents. It's just that's just such a useful. It's just such a handy one, and if you spend any time on Reddit, you know how super common it is. Don't spend time on Reddit.
I had a teacher who once said, of course your family is dysfunctional. There are humans in it.
Amazing. Leanna. Yeah, there are humans in my family too.
I know it's I don't want to say it's a problem, but like it causes a lot of problems.
It does, and humans are complicated. Humans are complicated, which I think is a really decent segue into boundaries.
Yeah, I feel like we've reached the actual theoretical topic of our conversation much faster this time. We're getting better.
Well, we've got more experience here. Also, I really have like a really hard half-hour cutoff because I've got to go pick up a kid, and I don't want her standing in the rain. She doesn't want to be standing in the rain. No one wants her standing in the rain. Yes.
There's a boundary.
For instance,
7 p.m. is our boundary. So we are here to answer a question that was asked last time. But last time was 2 weeks ago, and I have not actually gone back to rewatch it because I've been busy.
Oops. I didn't realize there was a question from last time. I wasn't sure what you were talking about. 2 times ago, there was a question. I don't remember a question from last time. Uh-oh.
Yep. We got another question.
So we're just gonna, glide right over that.
Yeah, someday we'll get the technical ability to edit that out and just say, we decided on our own entirely, came to us as a burst of inspiration. We're going to come back and talk more about boundaries.
Havva, we're live. It's never going to happen while we're live. That's the beauty of live. You get the real thing. Wait a second. What are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. That's the beauty of being live.
It is.
Okay. So I'd like to go in a direction that actually came up with a client recently, which is being an overfunctioner, which is something that we need to describe, and boundaries. So you want to explain what being an overfunctioner is, or would you like me to do it?
You go ahead.
Okay, being an overfunctioner is that whatever the problem is, you're the only one who can fix it. In your head, whatever the situation is, it's all on you. Your kid failed a test, it's your fault. Your husband forgot his lunch, you didn't remind him, it's your fault. A bill got left unpaid, your fault. You see where this is going? Your first cousin's dog doesn't have a play group, and you need to fix it. I think that's a pretty decent description of an overfunctioner. Yes,
it is, and also of a trauma response.
Yeah. Just try to keep the world working as best as you possibly can, because if you stop, it'll all fall apart.
And it will be your fault.
And it'll be your fault. Yeah.
And I have a friend who got yelled at work because she went on break and something was broken. And I asked her, why didn't they yell at the people who broke the thing, who are theoretically your coworkers of the same rank, and one of them has more seniority? And she's like, yeah, but no one expected them to be responsible.
Right.
So it's my fault for leaving them unsupervised.
Right. No, that's not how it works.
No.
Right. So something that I'm working on with one of my clients, although we only began broaching it today, and we just something that I do with clients sometimes is you just touch it and run, right? Because if you look at it too closely, it's overwhelming. So just if you've got a thought or you've got something and you're not ready to explore it, it's okay. You can touch it and run. It's really okay, because just that is enough to get started. It's enough to bring the awareness. And the touch it and run that we did today was what if that's not your fault? What if you're not actually responsible for that? That's all. Just what's a what if? What's it? Okay. Soon enough, I don't know if I don't think she's a viewer. So we will be building up to, hey, wait a second, I'm taking responsibility for this, but is it actually my responsibility? We're working out, right? You have to work your way up. That's a big question to start with, all at once. So right now we're just pointing out that this exists, and then we're going to proceed.
Absolutely, that's amazing, and it's a technique that's similar to what we do in acupuncture sometimes.
Yeah.
So say a person has chronic joint inflammation, tore something in their shoulder years ago, it still hurts. Not too much, but it interferes with daily life. A lot of times what happens, especially when people are living with chronic stress, if they're injured, their body will be like, okay, we have to heal enough that we can live with it. And then, because we're chronically stressed, we have to not keep messing with that, healing that joint. We have to spend our resources on survival. And sometimes people experience like 90% improvement from their first acupuncture session. I'm not saying this is guaranteed to happen. Don't count on it. But sometimes people come in after 10 years of pain. They have one acupuncture session. 90% of the pain is gone because you've just reminded the brain, by the way, this shoulder, it still hurts. I know you've been like treating it as a normal part of life.
Yeah.
And then it takes like another 20 sessions to get rid of the last 10%, which was the actual problem.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's, but starting with the touch it and run, very, very effective because you want to bring awareness without shocking the person or causing them to shut down, which when you ask a very, very big question about the way they've been living their lives, you gotta proceed with caution. You gotta proceed with caution. People's lives matter. You can't shake them up too much all at once.
Absolutely. All right. So I'm going back to Gary, the Scottish life coach, for a minute.
Okay.
Because he said something. I want to like get a giant billboard at the entrance to the city. He said people use the term comfort zone, and he doesn't agree with it. It's a stupid term because if it was actually comfort zone, we would be comfortable when we're in it. And people are not walking around going, God, my life is so comfortable. I feel great.
Okay. So what do we call it instead?
He says it's being addicted to the familiar.
Addicted to the familiar zone. It doesn't have the same ring to it.
Zone, but it's not the comfort zone. It is a form of addiction where even though it hurts us, we want to keep using it.
Yeah. How do we become addicted to the unfamiliar? Is that just scary and dangerous and like kind of a dumb thing we want to do?
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that because addicted to the unfamiliar. Did you ever read a book called Bush Pilot with a Briefcase?
No, that sounds good though.
Yeah, so it's a biography of an Alaskan bush pilot and the various things he did during his life. And at some point, he ended up flying weapons for the Israeli army during the Israeli War of Independence. And the way they got him is someone called him up and was like, hey, you have a pilot's license. Would you like to go to the Middle East where there's an active war on? And he said, will they be shooting at me? And he was told yes. And he said, okay, I'm in.
Okay.
Not the healthiest way to live life.
Right.
Which I think might be the opposite.
Them. We need our adrenaline junkies. This, like seriously, those are our ambulance drivers. Like lots of people would be dead if we didn't have adrenaline junkies.
We as a society, apparently there was a study done on, I don't remember what species of monkey, but some species of monkey, which forms family groups of about 50 monkeys, and some of the monkeys appear to have what would be symptoms of anxiety in humans.
Yeah, we talked about this last time, didn't we? Or did we talk about this on our own? It's so hard to keep up. Okay, if we already talked about the podcast, type it in, but we'll repeat it because the internet
we don't expect you to
has no memory. It turns out
it's totally safe. So I may be about to sneeze. Anyway, so they did an experiment and took the anxious monkeys, the ones that like pull on their own hair and are always sitting on the edge of things and jump really high when there are loud noises and don't get on well with the other monkeys and are loners. They took them out of the troop and like, I hope they did something nice to them. I didn't hear that. Gave them therapy, bananas. Yeah, but they thought when they did that, the troop as a whole, the monkeys that were left, all of the not anxious monkeys, they did not maintain cohesiveness as a group for more than 6 months. They fell apart. Lots of them were eaten, and then they just kind of split up, and they had to join other monkey groups or something.
Wow.
So.
Yeah. So your anxiety matters to human society.
Yeah. If something is a recurring thing in humans, such that we have whole groups of people who have it, then it presumably serves some purpose. But,
so this is the other side. So an adrenaline junkie is literally the extreme opposite end of the same phenomenon. So you've got your anxiety-ridden person. You've got the person who goes looking for anxiety. It's the same thing. It's just two sides, same coin, same exact coin.
Yeah.
If we need one, it follows that we're going to need the other. As ambulance drivers, show us.
Yep. Firefighters.
Anybody who works in the ER and likes it.
Oh, remind me to send you the okay. There's someone who does spoof interviews for nurses on YouTube. Yeah. And she did one where, like, had an interview for pediatrics, had an interview for whatever. And so the interview for the ER was, I don't see in your resume where it says you've been diagnosed with ADHD. Did you write that down, or did I miss it because I only read every other paragraph?
Oh my gosh. But the best ones are significant and severe ADHD. It's true. It's true. Like, my daughter works with I can't even, but wow. Wonderful human being, but like, wow.
The extreme end of the spectrum.
Yes. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. So would you say that there's a spectrum in people's ability to set boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that you can change where you are on the spectrum. And I think that, like you've got and we talked about this earlier about there are some people are innately have an easier time setting boundaries, and some people have to learn them. Some people come to it easily, and some people come to it kicking and screaming. We all need them to some extent, right? And then some of us have an easier time setting them for other people and for ourselves. I'm not mentioning, not to be specific or precise. No, and I know. And also and setting healthy boundaries is its own. Like that takes I think a certain amount of healthiness inside of yourself.
It takes, I think, a mix of the ability to be both flexible and inflexible.
Yes.
You need to be able to be inflexible to maintain boundaries, but in order to set healthy boundaries that are appropriate to the situation, you need the flexibility to move with the situation, which might be one of the...
So here's the thing, right? Like, I would agree that the healthiest boundaries have a certain amount of flexibility to them, right? That makes sense. What do you do with someone who, what works for you, and they're always trying to find that one they're trying to find the exception. They either don't recognize that other people have boundaries, or they don't care. What's your take on that?
First thing that comes to mind is that could be a sign of actual psychological problem.
Yeah, let's say it is.
Well, you can only control your own behavior. We discussed this earlier, and a boundary is something you can't say, like, this is my boundary, so you can't.
Right.
All you can do is, this is my boundary, so I'm gonna leave, take myself out of the situation, not talk to you anymore.
Right. And I think that there's a way to do that with serious amounts of class. Yes. I think that in the boundary, setting boundaries conversations that we're having, setting boundaries with kindness is a piece of the puzzle that tends to get forgotten. I think there's a lot of, set boundaries and fight for them and be aggressive about boundaries. And I think that there's that you don't need that at all. I think that you can be strong and kind.
I think that it's a more advanced skill than just setting boundaries, to set boundaries with any specific adjective.
Okay, yeah.
I know someone who grew up in a family that did not support her having boundaries, and ended up in some relationships where no one respected her having boundaries.
Guaranteed.
And at some point, she had been to enough therapy, and one day she set a boundary for someone and held her ground, and an entire friend group exploded, and it took out a chunk of the expat society of a specific city that I won't mention. And afterwards,
it was wonderful. I'm still cheering from over here, because you know what? Sometimes a group has to die. It just does. Sometimes it's unhealthy and the entire orbit is unhealthy, and sometimes that one person who's brave enough to say no and causes the chain reaction has just done the world an enormous favor. Like, she set a boundary for herself, but then made a whole lot of people's lives a little bit safer.
I am sure, and I think is that, like, after, I don't want to give anyone away, but she was like, basically every conversation with her for like the year afterwards is about boundaries and setting boundaries and you know, how you have to set boundaries and what her therapist has to say about boundaries. And at a certain point, it's like, okay, like everyone else gets it. Boundaries are important. But she had to go through that stage.
Yes.
Like when you come back, when you're moving from one extreme, you can't go straight to the middle. You have to go past moderate and into so to a certain extent towards the other extreme before you can start to balance out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure she tried to hold that boundary with as much kindness as she could, but I would not expect her to put kindness as the first goal there.
Yeah, that's fair. If we're so you're right. I am talking about that, but I also think that it needs to be talked about. I think that that when you're first setting boundaries, just do the best you can, and blowing stuff up. I mean, figuratively, probably not literally. Actually, no, literally also, you know what? How do you put up a new building if you don't take down the old one? Right? Sometimes the old building has to go. It's not earthquake safe. It's not, you know, it's too low down to the ground. You actually need it to be a 6-story building and it's only got 3 stories. One of my friend's buildings is being torn down for both of those reasons, please God, very soon. And it's just, you know, like, so sometimes you have to, and the way they're going to take it down is they're going to knock the whole thing to the ground. Sometimes you have to knock things down to the ground in order to build things back up again. And if that's caused by your saying no to someone, it's just a sign that it has to go. And it's going to hurt. I think it's really important that we say it's going to hurt, and you might feel guilty, you might take more responsibility. Here we are calling back. Aren't we amazing? We're so impressive. We're calling back to something that we talked about in the beginning. We're so good, like super us. But oh gosh, now I'm so self-congratulatory. I forgot what I was saying. Help me out here.
Taking responsibility for.
Right. So you are only responsible for the part that you're responsible for. You're not necessarily responsible for every single downstream consequence, even though people might call you and claim that you are. Like, you might get phone calls saying, you made your grandmother cry because you said no to your auntie. Well, your auntie needed to hear the word no for the first time in her life. And this is obviously not my situation because, you know, at this point in my life, all of those of my family members are no longer with us. And it never happened anyway, because that's just not, you know, we have other things going on. But the point is that, like, you might get blamed exactly like your friend who was blamed because she's the only one at work willing to take any responsibility at all. You might get blamed for things that you're just not responsible for, and you're not necessarily, you're responsible for your own actions, and you're responsible for your own safety, and you're not necessarily responsible for downstream unintended consequences or even intended consequences, right? Like, there is a limit. You have to stop and ask yourself, you know what, like, I'm taking this into myself, and this is also a boundary. Like, your responsibility, the responsibility that you take for yourself, that's a boundary.
Yes.
And it's a really, really important one. And that point where you say, I'm responsible for this, but I'm not responsible for that. And it sounds like you're not taking responsibility, which is in our society the worst thing you can possibly do. But no, you're taking precise responsibility. And that's
I'm taking
really
my responsibility, and I'm going over there with it. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so real quick, actually, you know what, not real quick. How about our topic next week? We will dive in to the halachic concept that every stringency is also a leniency.
Ooh, can we? Okay, we're going to have to explain all of everything that you just
one of those words next week.
Yes, everything that you just said. It's going to be an interesting one because, like, we're getting into, like, the technicalities of Jewish law and tradition.
Or we're talking about a very, very modern psychological concept that not enough people are familiar with.
Exactly, they're the same thing.
Exactly.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Thank you especially to everyone who watched the replay till the end. You're amazing.
Thank you so much. Come back next week, same time, can I say same bat time, same bat channel, and people are going to understand what I just said. Is it possible? If you understood what I just said, just leave a heart in the comments and I will know that you got it.
And if you scroll way, way back on my Instagram, you will see a post I wrote once on how I knew my therapist was the right person for me, because she finished our first session by saying same bat time, same bat channel.
Yes.
Okay. So.
Okay, fantastic.
Next week. Okay. Great talking to you, Malkie.
Great talking to you too, Havva. That was good. Okay,
yes.
bye.
Bye.